There we go. Okay. So I said I'm trying to get somewhere from last week and this week. These are connection points to get to this final point. And this final point that I want to get to, I want you to start thinking about and come next week, hopefully, to talk about, is how rules relate to us. Okay, so I want to talk about law. I want to talk about Torah. I want to talk about why God has given us this book, and should we be thinking of it as so is Torah legislation? Torah from the word Yara just means like instruction, right? So should it be considered legislation? Are they laws? Is Torah a law, or is it something else? And what I'm hoping to at least kind of throw out there and for us to have a conversation about next week is it possible that it's not legislation at all, that we shouldn't be thinking of Torah as any kind of a moral system? Okay, so already hopefully your mind is starting to go, oh boy, this is going to get really scary, because if Torah is not moral system, what in the world is it? Because there's a list of laws, right? There's a ton of laws in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, even in Exodus, we've got a bunch of those laws, right? That's what's going on here. So we have these legislations, we have this what's seemingly moral system. And today we say we really get upset when the laws get taken off of the courtroom walls, right? We don't want that to happen. The 10 Commandments are for us today, but are they? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Are the 10 Commandments for us? Should we be thinking about this idea of Torah very different? Should, instead of it being legislation or moral system, we should be thinking about the laws as illustrations of wisdom in a particular context. Can anybody read that? I forgot to write where. This is the part that I'm not supposed. Let's see where. Don't write in that big white spot, right? Okay, which is exactly where I wrote. All right, so illustrations of wisdom for their particular day and their particular context, with a covenant that they have with Yahweh that we do not share. Even though we have a covenant, we don't share that covenant. So maybe we need to be thinking about this differently. That's where I want to get to. Okay, so we can't have that discussion yet because we've got to get through some of these ideas of what wisdom is, what Proverbs is. So let's talk about making choices and review where we were last week. So everything, what circumstances where you were, I can talk, I promise. What circumstances are there in your life where you have to make choices and you can't figure out how to narrow down your choices? Right? What is this? Can you think of it? Like if you're standing in a candy store, my parents used to let me take the bike path to 7-Eleven to get a comic book, and you're standing there and you also want to get a candy bar and you've got 900 choices. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Like you thought you wanted a Snickers, but now there's a Marathon bar, which they don't have anymore, which is really sad. And there's also dinosaur eggs, and there's anybody from the 80s remember any of these candies, right? These are the kinds of things that, that really difficult choice. Or you're trying to watch a movie and you've got a good choice of all the best romantic comedies, and you know that you're not doing anything with any of those. Instead, you're going to choose between Die Hard, The Patriot, Braveheart, the good ones. Okay, but you don't know how to choose, right? So this is the kind of things. Or maybe you send your husband to the store to get something, right? You tell him to pick up some cheese, but you didn't bother to tell him that there are 9,000 different kinds of cheese that are there. And even within, like once he knows that it's cheddar, then there's cheese and there's cheese product. Are you supposed to be getting cheese product? We don't know. Ladies, would you just tell us exactly what to get with like a barcode scanner? It's much easier. These are the choices that we're making, okay? So this is what it's going to all be about today, choices. What are our choices? And this is what Proverbs is written to help us with, making good choices. Okay, so the things that we talked about last week, quick review here. I wrote, does anybody have if you've got your notes, I'm actually on the very first part there on the how I think I wrote and stuff like that. I made a couple for you guys. You know, if you go on Google and say making choices or how, like the WikiHow, those kinds of things, right? How to make a good career choice, how to choose a spouse, how to make a job offer, all these different kinds of choices that you have to do. So last week I said, number one, let's get rid of all this stuff. Number one, we have, let's see, 1 and 2. Our culture needs wisdom. Anybody agree? Just nod your head, right? I think the political cycle over the last whatever dozen years has proven that our culture needs wisdom. Do we not? Is it possible that we could just get a grown-up? Like any grown-up, we don't even care. I could literally pick one off the street and probably do better than the people. Sorry if anybody's offended by it, but right, there's a lot out there. Like, who are the people? We're given these 2 choices or these 3 choices. Anybody would be a better choice sometimes than some of these people. So culture needs one. We individually need more. In our everyday kinds of things, we need to grow up, right? We've got all these shirts that say, I can't adult today, or what are the other, like, we're almost proud of being childish. Like we don't want to grow up. We're happy. The Peter Pan syndrome, right? We want to be young forever. But it's time for people to grow up. Proverbs is written to help us to grow up. We all think that we have grown-up ideas in our head, but we don't. Like, we think that if we can drive our car, then we should be able to drive, a 300-mile-an-hour rocket car too. We think that if we know how to make babies, we should also be able to raise children. We think that, we read a couple of marriage books, even the good marriage books, not the Ezzo and Dobson books, but maybe I don't even know what good books there are out there. And we think we should know how to raise kids and get married to the right person and do marriage right. So I just wanted to say, we need to grow up. Number 3, these are all review from last week kind of things that we talked about. Number 3, wisdom is a path, not a door. Okay, you don't just get wise. It doesn't happen like that. This is a long process. Every little bit of experience that you get gives you a little bit more wisdom, right? That's what we're hoping for anyway. So we're all isn't it amazing that we still go to dinner on Friday at 7 o'clock, and we go to a nice restaurant, we send the kids in to find out what the wait is, and they say it's going to be a 90-minute wait. Like, how many times do we have to do that before we realize we probably shouldn't go out at 7 o'clock on a Friday night to dinner without making a reservation? But still, we're just stuck in this old pattern of things. Or driving in traffic. Like, let's go do our errands at 5:30 for some of you in DC traffic. All right? Like, let's just jump on 495, go around the Beltway. It should take no time at all. 4 hours later, right? We should know these things, and yet we don't. So wisdom is a path, not a door. It's a process. It's a long obedience in the same direction, I said last week. That's Nietzsche's line. Eugene Peterson has stolen it in a much more beautiful way. So a long obedience in the same direction. Okay, just we're constantly obeying. Now, again, be careful with the word obey, right? Because I'm trying to get us to think of this differently. I don't want you to think of it as, in fact, the word obey itself probably doesn't mean like, here's a demand. It's more like heed, listen. Okay, so depending on who it comes from, heed my words might be demanding, or it might be guiding, might be putting forward an idea, like heed, listen to me. And this has to do with even the age, like me as a father raising children. There's a big difference between raising my 5-year-old and raising my 16-year-old and raising my 21-year-old, right? I don't really raise my 21-year-old at all, okay? The most I can do with that, Caden's right there, he can tell you, is he calls for advice and I give him wisdom. And it's not always wise. He still has to make the choice himself. Like there's no rules about when he comes in. 16-year-old, not all that much different, honestly. I mean, he's been raised. 5-year-olds, when I tell them to do something, it's a little bit more different, right? It's a demand. It's not just heed my words. It's a heed my words, right? So it's who it's coming from too. Okay, so Proverbs number 4 are memorable sayings. Thank you. Snappy sagacity. Right? Or sageness. Yes, sage. A sage is a wise person, right? So giving us something that is sage is and snappy is quick, right? So even this is kind of proverbial almost, right? Because it's got the alliteration going on. If you say it really quickly and people understand what you're talking about. So brief, memorable wisdom, not rules, not laws, but brief, memorable wisdom. All right, number 5, general truisms. So these are things that are generally accurate, but not decrees. Just because you raised your children in the way they should go doesn't mean they won't depart from it. That's what we said last week, right? I could have done a decent job raising my children. They could still turn out as bad as Katie did, right? Okay, it's not my fault. He won't listen. So actually, he's fantastic. All right, so there you go. And you know, save money. That's not a really good proverb, but that's some. Is there a proverb for saving money? What is it?
Probably about the ants.
A penny saved is a penny earned. There you go. Somebody said an ant or something like that. That would have been good too. But a penny saved is a penny earned is a great advice. But the idea is keep saving the money, right? Keep putting it aside. And hopefully with that, you're going to be wise. You're going to have more money later on, but it might not. You know, you may have been saving money for the last 2 years and put it all into some beautiful 401k. And yesterday, the stocks, I don't know what happened today, but yesterday they took a nosedive and now you have no money, right? So your 401k turns into a 101k or something like that. Okay, so that's a possibility. All right, so general truism. Authorship, we talked about authorship. Solomon, we're talking about Proverbs. Solomon is the author of this, or they're attributed to Solomon as the wise king. They're also attributed to other kings. Who are the other kings?
Josiah.
I don't think so. Is he? Maybe.
was guessing.
Talking. There might be something from Josiah.
David.
I don't think there's anything maybe from David. Okay, maybe instead of just guessing, I'll just tell you. Lemuel, Agur, Hezekiah. Okay, these are 3 of the other kings that are on there. And this is important because especially this king isn't even Israelite. Agur. He's not an Israelite. So we have wisdom outside of Israel, which is important to remember. So, and I would say this, there's still good Proverbs to be written. So when I teach this in seminary, I make people come up with Proverbs. So that should be a good goal for you. If you've got kids there, make them come up with some kind of make them come up with a proverb. Something about their life. What happened today? Okay, so one of my favorite ones is 7 o'clock on Monday is later than 9:15 on Sunday. Okay, think that one through for a second. Right? It's amazing how nobody can ever make it to church on time on Sunday, right? But they get up 2 hours earlier to make it to work. But church is later, but we're just like, I just can't make it. I don't know. Really? You weren't late for work yesterday, were you? So it's just a normal thing. Okay. So what is the book of Proverbs about? Here it is in one big summary statement. Come on, it's a Sunday school answer. Yeah. Jesus. The book of Proverbs is about Jesus, and Jesus is never mentioned in the book of Proverbs. Okay, so we're going to figure this out. So chapter 1, verse 7 begins our story. So if you've got a Bible, you'll want to look at that. Chapter 1, verse 7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of, so it can be translated different ways. Knowledge. Yep. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and
Fools despise wisdom and discipline.
that's right. Fools despise wisdom and discipline, or wisdom and instruction. And we're going to find that those words, all of these words like wisdom, instruction, discipline, understanding, discernment, prudence, all of these words are very similar to each other. And so in your versions, they might tell you different ones. Where someone else says wisdom, yours will say understanding or something like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to it. But fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So if you want wisdom and knowledge and instruction and prudence and discipline and discernment and all those things, then it comes from the Lord, right? It comes from capital L-O-R-D in all of your texts, I'm guessing, right? Which means what?
Yahweh.
What?
Yahweh.
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 Okay, anytime it's all capital, it's always going to be Yahweh. If it's lowercase, it's going to be Adonai. It's another Hebrew word. Okay, but this is the word, the covenant language of God. This is the covenant name he's given, or he gives himself. Okay, I am that I am, or something similar to that. We'll argue Exodus 3 some other time. All right, so fear God, that is, have reverential respect, be in awe of, listen, heed his instructions. That's what we're talking about here. Oh, cute little hug, thanks. All right, so lots of debate on literary structure. I'm going to erase and move on. Okay, all of this was review. And we're going to get a little bit more of that as we continue. Remember, this is all we need in order to ask the question, is Torah for us today? What is the point of wisdom literature? What are we supposed to do with it? So lots of debate on literary structure. Here's what I'm going to just lay it out for you on the book of Proverbs, just so we have some basic things. Okay, chapter 1 is the Proverbs of Solomon. That's how it's going to begin. And yet, you're not going to get any Proverbs from Solomon. Okay, so it's going to tell you that it's Proverbs from Solomon, but it's not. They're just speeches, no Proverbs. So that's chapters 1 through 9. Chapters 1 through 9 is going to be broken up into 3 sets of 3. Each chapter, so 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, and then in there, each of those chapters is broken up as well. And they work together really well. It's been very, very well curated. Okay, so there's a reason for all that. We're not going to go into all of the details there. The second part there is chapter 10. So chapter 10 is also the Proverbs of Solomon. And this is where the actual Proverbs begin, the snappy sagacity, those little things that he talks about. So the blocks of Proverbs. That's going to go all the way through 10 through 24. Chapter 25 and forward is, I think actually there's more Proverbs of Solomon, but they come from Hezekiah. They're the ones that have been later on compiled, probably after he's gone. Okay, so we don't know whether any of these actually come from Solomon, but they're given credit to Solomon. Just like the Psalms of David aren't necessarily from David, the of in there means that they're attributed to in some way. Okay, so maybe he's just the king of music and everybody says that he wrote these things or he had a part of them. And this is the king of wisdom. So Hezekiah says that they come from Solomon. Okay, then we get to chapter 30 and it's the king's Agur. And chapter 31 is King Lemuel. I'm doing this from memory, so if you're looking at it, I might be wrong. And then 31.5, that is halfway through chapter 31, we have the woman, right? Proverbs 31, woman. Okay, so this and this are going to correspond to each other. This is really important to know. Okay, I think everybody knows it because I've probably taught it in this class many times, but there's a lot of people that still don't seem to get this. You're still sitting in this Proverbs 31 woman kind of idea that you have to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Okay. Ladies, you don't have to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Okay. Give it up. It's over.
Impossible.
You don't have to do it. All right. Well, maybe I should change this. Men, you have to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Okay. Everyone hear this? Men have to be Proverbs 31 women. There's nothing in this that is specific to women. It is given to you in the guise of women, right? That is, that's the personification it's given, just in the same way that the young man in Proverbs 1 through 9 that is reaching this crossroads and has to figure out which direction he's going in is a young man. It's not written for young men. It's written for young people. But we're going to tell the story as if a man is being seduced by wisdom and folly, by two women. So when you get to chapter 31.5, it's a woman, yes, but it's wisdom. This is what wisdom looks like. So the story is bookended. Okay, we call this an inclusio. So men, you must be Proverbs 31 women. So if I ever get to do a men's conference again, that's going to be one of the titles of it, right? Men as the Proverbs 31 woman. Okay, that's what we're looking for. All right, so that's the order of things. Remember, Agar, the fact that Agar gets in here is to show that non-Israel is part of this. That wisdom can come outside of Israel. Even though it's the fear of the Lord, Yahweh, that fear of the Lord is what really makes everything work. But we all get our wisdom, divine wisdom, from the same place, from Yahweh. Sorry, something's happened on my screen. Hold on a second. I will be back with you. Oh no, that didn't work at all. There we go. Okay, so I don't know what I was saying. Was it really important? No. Proverb? No? Wow.
I didn't say no. He said no.
Yes,
We all
you
get
said
our
that
wisdom
wisdom.
from Yahweh.
Yes. So it comes from, so Van Til, anybody who remembers Van Til? Is any Van Tillian presuppositionalists in the group here? Van Til once said, right, we have to sit on the lap of God in order to slap him in the face. Okay, so even atheists, even agnostics, even people who want nothing to do with Yahweh are still empowered by Yahweh, are still, they have their wisdom, any smarts they have, any intelligence they have, any abilities they have, still comes from Yahweh. So they I hate Yahweh, but the reality is that even to say, I hate Yahweh, he's the one who gave them the voice to be able to say those things, right? So Agar can be wise, Yahweh can give him wisdom. We call this common grace. Right? There's smart people out there. I read a lot of people who are not Christians in their interpretations of scripture because they're smart. They can figure things out. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay. So now we have this. So we got Proverbs 31 woman. Let's talk about Solomon himself for a second. Because Solomon's kind of a mess. Okay. But here's how I want you to think about Solomon. Solomon equals Adam. As you read this story, I want you to think of this as the Adam story. Okay? Solomon is this man who is given a choice of whether he will choose wisdom or folly. Just like Adam is, right? This is pretty important. Adam is given a choice. Eat from the tree of what?
Knowledge.
Knowledge of good and evil, or wisdom, we might call that, right? So he's given a choice to eat from the tree of wisdom. He's told that he should not, don't eat from the tree of wisdom. Why in the world would he be told not to eat from the tree of wisdom? Because the whole point of all of this is that he's supposed to get wisdom at the right time from the right person, right? As he grows. So Adam is a young man, or a patat, an open, a liminal. He's a character before he's reached his potential. He's beginning his life. he doesn't have a lot of wisdom yet. Okay, so this is Adam. He doesn't know what to do yet. He's a child. I've used this when we talked about the Adam story. I've said it like this, right? He's the kid in the front yard. He's the 3-year-old, and he's toddling over towards the road. And you have got to give him some laws, right? There's got to be some rules. Later on, those rules turn into wisdom, right? Like, so at one point, Davin was not allowed to run in the road. Now he is allowed to run in the road. It's no longer rules. It's about wisdom. Okay, so because he's no longer at this stage of patach, at least not for running in the road. But there are other things that children are in that patach, that open area, right? It's actually the word petty, but it comes from the word patach. Okay, so, and that's how Proverbs is going to open up this story, right? There's a young man on a road, and there's going to be 2 women trying to seduce him. Okay, does this sound like every child from the age of 16 till, I don't know what, if you're still single, at least 50, right? Okay, I'm constantly being like, okay, should I choose? What should I choose? Folly or wisdom? This hot woman or this hot woman, right? This is what men struggle with. It's just natural. So that's the story of Proverbs. This is the story of David. David. Oh, that's not what I was going to go for. But David is the one who he desires. Let's see. He sees, he desires, and he takes. Do you remember this with Bathsheba?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the same kind of language that Adam has. Sees the apple, desires it as good for fruit, good for taste, and then takes it and eats. Okay. So this story, Proverbs, is going to be in a narrative kind of a setting of what is this young man going to see and what's he going to do? Is he going to desire it? And wisdom is later on going to say, there's nothing that you desire that compares to me. And we sing a song like that, don't we? It comes from Proverbs. Nothing you desire compares, right? What is that? As the lamb, as the deer pants for the wood. Is that one?
So my soul panteth after thee.
Is that the one that sings, that has that line in it? Nothing I desire compares to you. Anyway, doesning matter. You guys know what I'm
I
talking
think it's
about.
Sinead O'Connor.
It's not Sinead O'Connor. I'm quite sure of that, but she's got good stuff. Nothing compares to you. Nothing compares. Wait, you got a bald head. Yeah, okay.
Nothing compares.
Oh, that was pretty good. You got the little extra in there. All right, good. So it's not Sinead O'Connor. This was some praise Maranatha or who knows what his name is. Okay, but Solomon is this character. Solomon is given a choice between wisdom or everything else, right? And so now he's writing this having chosen wisdom. But if you know anything about Solomon, you're going to quickly realize that this wise king was not wise very often. In fact, the big problem that he had was that he listened, he heeded to a woman.
Yeah, just like Adam.
Exactly. Just like Adam. So the author of the story wants you to see, they're begging for you to see this way. Okay. Even wisdom herself in chapter 3 is called a tree of life. There's going to be constantly rubies and gold and silver, all which come from the Eden narrative. Okay, it's a land where it's rich in Havilah of gold and silver, right? Adam himself has 12 stones. Okay, that's the connection with later Levitical priests, right? So we've got the 12 stones in Eden, but also on the priest's breastplate. Okay, so all of these things you're supposed to be thinking, how will they choose wisdom? What are they going to do in this? Will they choose the tree of life, or will they choose poorly the tree of the knowledge of good and evil at a time when they shouldn't be? Okay, so that's how you need to come to the story. Does that all make sense? Because that might be new for people in here. This is a little bit extra. Okay, so we got 4 characters. The 4 characters are Lady Wisdom, Lady Folly, okay, the king or the royal father, something like that, the person who's giving advice, and the petty, the young kid, okay, who's getting this advice. Those are our people here, and yeah, and you might say the wicked man. Okay, so there's a wicked man that corresponds to the king. There's a lady, and then this character is not really in there. He's just kind of the thing that brings the narrative together. But these are the ones that are arguing against each other in some sense. Okay, so let's see here. Will this patak, this young child, will he be like Adam the redeemed story or Adam the cursed story? So this is our new chance. Solomon is Adam, either redeemed or cursed. Adam was cursed, right?
Mhm.
Adam was kicked out of the garden. He listened to the woman, and so he died. Died just means exile. He gets kicked out of the garden. He no longer has access to the tree of life or to wisdom in its fullness. By the way, if you don't choose wisdom, the end of chapter 8 will say, you choose death, right? It's a powerful statement right at the end of chapter 8, I think. What's it say? All who hate me love death.
Mhm.
That's how it ends. You're like, okay, that's like mic drop kind of thing. Like, if you want to go for folly, fine. Death, that's what you get. Okay, muerte, death. All right, so, yeah, all right, I don't need to keep going on that. So the redeemed is the picture of the image of God. That's what we're looking for here. Remember our conversation about Adam a long time ago about how the image of God works. Okay, so image, or tzedek, you don't care about that, tzedek. Image of God is like an icon, which is the Greek, by the way, icon. You know what an icon is, right? It's a little image that you take, right? So Adam is the icon, or he's supposed to be the icon of God. He's supposed to be the image bearer, the representative, the one who takes the place of the king, the vice regent under the great king. Okay, so this is the question. Will he bear the image of God? Will Solomon, will this young man, will all of us, will they bear the image of God, or will they be exiled and move outside of the garden? And our journey, our hope throughout all of Scripture is through wisdom, we regain Eden. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to regain Eden. What we're going to find out is that we need someone else to help us regain Eden, right? That all of our greatest choices really aren't all that great. We keep making bad choices. So we're looking for somebody to regain Eden. We're looking for somebody. This is what Lemuel will say later on. We'll get to this, but I get excited about it, so I bring it up at the wrong times. But Lemuel will say, we need someone to come down from on high. Okay, he'll use this exact language, right? They're going up and going down. We need someone to come down from on high. So it almost seems like there is someone up on a mountain, like a wise sage. What we call these, like gurus, right? They're always on a mountain. They're sitting, with their legs crossed, and they're just meditating or whatever. And you climb on the mountain for 16 years, and then you find, here he is. It's the story of Dr. Strange, right? He's got to go up the mountain through Nepal, finally get the wisdom, and you can change mystical arts and blah, 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 right? This is what's happening. What we need is somebody on the mountain to come down to us. So you can see where this is all going to lead. You can see why I said this is the story of Jesus, right? We need someone to come down from on high, someone who sees a bird's eye picture of everything, because none of us can see that. We don't see the bird's eye picture, do we? We see every little tiny thing in our context. We don't get the bigger thing. I mean, this has been my life for the last year, right? I have no idea what God is doing. It doesn't make any sense. I'm ready to give up all the time. But he's got a bird's eye view. He knows what's going on. If I can just trust him for that. Okay, that's the problem, isn't it? It's just trusting him when we don't see him. Like it happened 2,000 years ago that someone came down from the mountain, but it's been a long time. I need other people to come down from the mountain and give me some help. I need a new burning bush, right? And this is our story every time, right? This is it. It's the cross. Which direction are we going to go? Are we going to choose folly or wisdom? And if it was this simple, If it was just as simple, like there's a big sign that says folly and a big sign that says wisdom, who would choose folly? Like no one wants to be a fool. The problem is that folly and wisdom are both super crazy hot ladies. Okay, and it's hard to figure out which one is the right one that we should choose because we don't have somebody on high telling us what to do, or do we?
Yeah.
Right? That's the point of Proverbs, is to give us a little bit of wisdom in this direction, or the point of this text in general. Not to give us rules, I don't think, legislation, but to guide us on our path. Okay, so I'm sure at this point I have like gone all over the place and skipped stuff, and yeah. So we all get our, let's just end this with, or end that little section with, we all get our garden test, right? This is the garden test. Every day you're probably given a garden test. Will you choose the beauty of Eden, or will you choose the exile? And our problem is that we're constantly choosing the exile. Okay, we hate wisdom and so choose death. So here's what I want to do. I want to read with you through Proverbs, not from chapter 1 on. I want to really quickly read chapter 7 because I want you to see what folly looks like. Then I want to go a little bit slower in chapter 8 and show you some cool things in it. And then I want to go even slower in chapter 9, which we won't probably get to today, in order to just so we can see this, we can see what's happening literarily in chapter 9, because there's this cool chiasm that takes place there that nobody ever seems to notice. So, and we'll talk about that in just a second. All right. So here we have the royal father. He's going to introduce things in chapter 8. But before we get to chapter 8, let's do chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the culminating speech of Lady Folly. All right. And I'm going to read it just in my NIV. My son, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands and you will live. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you're my sister. Call understanding your kinsman. They will keep you from the adulteress, from the wayward wife with her seductive words. All right, so that's the royal father. Listen to my teachings, young man, right? It'll be good for you. So now we jump to, here is Lady Folly speaking. At the window of my house, I looked out through the lattice. In the earlier chapters, both wisdom and folly have built a house with 7 pillars. They're great houses. They're both, so here's super awesome house over here, big mansion, great table, all the things that are, it's beautiful. Okay, and it's the same thing for wisdom. I looked through the lattice. I saw among the simple, that's that, right? This is the open. It doesn't mean that they're dumb, but they're young. They're ignorant still. I noticed among the young men a youth who lacked judgment. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight as the day was fading, as the dark night sets in. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She is loud and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Okay, so ladies, listen carefully to this. You don't want to be loud, defiant, and always running around. You're supposed to be quiet, submissive, and staying at home. I mean, it's right there, clear as can be. Just say it. I'm just kidding. I love you. You can go outside and you can be loud sometimes too. All right, sometimes, not always. Okay. She took, let's see here. She never stayed at home. Now in the streets, now in the square, at every corner she lurks. So she's everywhere. She's in everybody's business. She's trying to figure stuff out, who this person is and how she can get him. She takes hold of him. She takes, right? Desires and takes, sees, desires, takes. She takes hold of him and kissed him. And with a brazen face, she said, I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I have fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and I found you. Okay, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I'm prepared. Now the seduction begins. I mean, she's already seduced him, right? She just started making out with him. As soon as she sees him, she grabs him and she's making out with him. By the way, ladies, that doesn't mean you can't do that. It's perfectly fine for you to do that, ladies. Okay, anyway, I think there's 1, 2, 3. There's a few, four single women on here. So I'm just talking to you specifically.
5, 6.
Yeah, 6. Okay, six single women. I'm just trying to help you, like I have a clue. All right, so I've covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. All right, I perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Cinnamon should be done more in seduction, I think. I mean, I'm just saying, because cinnamon isn't that everything? All right. It doesn't make you, it makes you sneeze. It's not pepper. Cinnamon. Okay. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money. He'll not be home till full moon. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter. It's just brilliant language, isn't it? Like, she seduced him, and he's just entranced, like following. He's about to be killed, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it'll cost him his life, right? Folly means death. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Okay, once again, remember, death equals exile. Separation. That's how you should read this in the canonical context. There's a reason that this book makes it into our canon. It's because they're reading this as an Adam story or as an Israel story, as Israel making the wrong choices throughout its life, and it leads to exile, separation from the temple. It's why in Haggai's time that they're so excited that they get to go back, right? They get to go back, and now they've regained Eden. Okay, if you know anything about Eden, Eden is Israel. It is the temple. That's the symbol that's going on there. Eden is the temple. Eden is Jerusalem. Eden is the cosmic mountain. Okay, where the gods, or in our case with scripture, monotheism, the God lives. Okay, this is where we're trying to get back to. And everything else, folly, is exile and separation. Okay, so chapter 8. How much time do I have?
15 minutes.
15 minutes till
6.
till 6. So I've got longer than that.
Okay,
good.
I don't know what time you're.
Yes, quarter after is what we usually go to.
Yeah.
But I try to make the last 15 minutes more interactive. Does anybody have anything they want to say right now? Because I've been excited and just moving at like super fast pace. So I'm just going to be quiet for a second. They teach you in teaching school that you should wait a full minute.
That's a lot of time.
Someone told me that once. I never went to teaching school. I don't know.
Teaching school.
Is there a teaching
Is there
school?
such a thing?
Education degree? I don't know.
Teaching.
I think that's just school.
Yeah, don't be afraid of the silence. We got some teachers in here. So,
You should be afraid of silence.
all right. Nobody has any brilliant things to say. Nobody's mind has been blown already. You're just like, whatever, this is boring stuff. Move on.
No.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Chapter 8. Let's do it.
Just get.
So we got the royal father, okay, the king, the father figure in this, setting up the scene for Lady Wisdom now. So Lady Folly, we just met in chapter 7. Now we're going to get to meet Lady Wisdom, who's going to be, right, chapter 31. That's who we're talking about here. So does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? So wisdom and understanding will be sisters, or they're the same, right? That's the idea, is wise, understanding, discerning people. At the highest point along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. So here they are. So if I were to make it should have been better, like wisdom's here and folly's here, where the paths meet together, because he's got to make the decision. At the highest point, beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud. Okay, so she's not everywhere, but she is in the gate, just like Folly was. And she's in the court place, but she's not loud, but she's crying aloud. There's a different emphasis on these things, but they're still very similar. Okay, so she's at the gate. And if you remember the gate from, for instance, the book of Ruth, right? Boaz is at the gate. This is where the elders meet. Okay, this is where the people who are wise, the decision makers, meet. Today in our church, it would be this room, right? This is the session meeting, the session room. which is the place the elders or the wise people in the church meet. That's the idea anyway. In a lot of churches, we don't choose our elders based on their wisdom. We choose it based on their the fact that they're actually alive and they have some
They're willing to do it.
and they're willing to do it, and they have business acumen or something like that. But we're supposed to be choosing based on wisdom. And here is Lady Wisdom out she's among the elders. Of course she is, because that's what elders are. They're wise. And wisdom isn't exactly a person, it's a characteristic, but we're personifying her. So she's hanging out in that place. Okay. So she's given her speech. To you, O people, I call out. What does my NIV say? To you, O men, I call out. Okay. Obviously, the word is men there.
And to you, O men, I call.
To you, men. Is that what it said?
And to you, O men, I call.
Right. So it is the word men. So it's definitely male. But that's just the way the story has been, right? It's a boy making decisions. It's a man making decisions, and wisdom is a woman. You can go any direction you want. You just reverse this. It's perfectly fine to reverse it. So men are standing there and calling out to women.
Like a proper woman, though. Whereas Folly's like a harlot.
That's right. She's
Wisdom's
dressed like a
proper
prostitute.
woman.
That's right.
Wisdom is proper. She's
That's
there.
right.
She's not coming at you with all of the
That's exactly true. But she's coming to men. Okay, but just translate this as people.
She's not like using it.
Wisdom is coming to people. I raise my voice to all mankind, and there it is very specifically. You who are simple, gain prudence. You who are foolish, set your hearts on it. Listen, for I have trustworthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true. My lips detest wickedness. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are upright to those who have found knowledge. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire compares with her. Okay, we've already heard this kind of language, right? So here they are. It's the silver, the gold, the rubies. Those are all wonderful things, but that's what a priest has. He has to choose wisdom. He has to choose properly. I love that it says none of them is crooked. All of them are just. There's this crooked and perverse understanding. I would argue, and I've done this in other places, but we're not going to go into it in too much detail right now. I would argue that we need to start rethinking what we think of. Okay, this is where heresy starts coming in. So just remember this group, they asked me to teach this, and they wanted me specifically to step outside the box. So if you're here and you just jumped on FaceTime for a few minutes, they want me to do this. I'm not saying this is the way it is. I'm just saying, let's talk and think about these things. I need to give my caveats here. I think we need to redefine what sin is. So sin is any thought, word, or deed that breaks God's law. So our catechism says, right? Okay, or it is sin is any thought, word, or deed by commission, or let's see, anything that I can't even remember the longer catechism. Anyway, that's what we think of. It's missing the mark. Okay, but maybe we need to start thinking of it as something that is crooked, twisted, something that is chaotic, something that fights against order, doesn't like order. Remember, all the way from Genesis, we have this battle with order. We call it the chaos Kampf motif, right? This battle with order. Chaos is coming in. So in Egyptian mythology, we have this word, ma'at. Okay, ma'at just means order. But it's probably a decent word that can work also for the word wisdom. Balance, putting things in the right, choosing the right path. This is what we're fighting for in this world. This is what we're fighting for in politics. This is what we're fighting for in the church. Sorry about that. I thought that was off. So ma'at is is this idea, order or wisdom. Okay, this is how I think of sin. C.S. Lewis does this really well.
Somebody really wants you. Go to First Peter 3.
Okay, they're trying to get a hold of me for the session meeting, which happens in 15 minutes, and I can't talk to them right now. So C.S. Lewis talks about this. Have anybody read the Space Trilogy? Everybody's read Narnia, but anybody read the Space Trilogy? Oh, come on. All right, Dad has, Lisa has, good. Okay, got a few of you have, and maybe, I don't know, on the bottom, I can't see you guys. So in the Space Trilogy, we've got Ransom and who are the characters in it? Those of you who remember? Ransom is the good guy in the story, but there's another guy. Anyway, the bad guy in the story talks about, they call him the bent one. The bent one or the twisted one. I love that. That really, like, it grabs hold of my imagination in a different way. He's the one that is causing chaos. You find him, Ransom finds him like sitting down on the rocks and taking a frog-like being on this other planet and like ripping open its back and so it can't walk or hop well and just for fun. He's just crooked. He's bent. Like he's just doing things to cause chaos, right? That's what demons are, by the way, just chaos makers. They're the ones that keep us from order. So we're constantly talking about this tohu vabohu, right? The chaos, and then the one who conquers the tohu vabohu. Tohu vabohu just means chaos, the tofu sudoku. Yes, right. So that word just means formless and void from Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, formless and void, or uninhabited and uninhabitable. It just means chaos, tohu vabohu. All right, so, and God comes and conquers, right? The spirit, the ruach of God hovers over the waters of the chaos and calms things and starts putting things in order that they're supposed to be. That's Genesis chapter 1 is the ordering of the cosmos. Or what we're going to find out in Proverbs, it's the, I'm going to use this word, it's the carving of the chaos. Oh, yeah. Carving, etching. So God is going to carve out a rakia to separate the waters from the waters in Proverbs. This isn't in Genesis, but it is in Proverbs. He's going to carve out a land spot so that the land can rise and the waters are put back. This carved out word, we're about to get to this in Proverbs, but I just get excited. Carved out word is the same word for like etched in things like Hammurabi's Code or the Ten Commandments. Okay, kings etch in their decrees in order to carve out the chaos, to bring order, to bring ma'at. That's what they do. This is what God is doing in Genesis chapter 1. Okay, he's carving out the chaos and bringing order, just like kings are supposed to do following him. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Is that cool? Mm-hmm. Okay, super cool to me. I don't know. All right, so now I probably have nothing else to say about chapter 8, but who knows? We'll see what I have. All right, so practical wisdom.
I think we have a question, Jason.
Okay, great. I don't have an answer, but I'm happy to hear.
Lisa, did you have
That's
a question?
me. Thank you, Hannah. I did. And I don't know if this really it doesn't really have to do with your subject matter, but it has to do with Genesis 1. So like if God created everything from nothing, he created everything. Why was there chaos to start with?
Okay.
He's a God of order. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't agree with your premise, at least not in Genesis chapter 1. So you're arguing for creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. That's the cool Latin phrase for it. So we're trying to be scholars here, so we got to use cool Latin phrases, right? So out of nothing. But in Genesis chapter 1, we have nothing like that. Because Genesis 1 is not the creation story, it's the creation of Israel's story. So what you see in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 is water. Water all over, and tohu vabohu. Okay, that's what God begins to work with. What you're asking, Lisa, is something that takes place prior to all of that. And all I can say is I have no idea.
Okay.
The Bible doesn't talk about when God actually created the world and how he did those things. So I'm going to go ahead and assume you're right, that there is a creation ex nihilo, because I think John 1:1 talks to that. John 1:1 says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were created by him, and nothing was that was without him, right? So I'm going to say that God did create all things out of nothing, but that this story in Genesis 1 is not that story. But I don't know what to say. How did the chaos get there? I don't have any idea. I think the authors, I got you, 15 minutes. I think the authors are trying to say, hey, we all know that there's chaos in the world. Here's what God's doing about it. They're not trying to tell you, here's how chaos got here. So that would just be pure speculation on my part as to how any of that happened. That's just the way it starts.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, good.
Say that
Thank
again?
you.
Okay, good. All right.
And I like it.
All right, so I talked about the wealth. I talked about everything, the riches, the desirable, right? Nothing I desire compares to you. Again, it's the language from Genesis, right? They desired it. It was good to eat. They desired the food and they took it. And here she is, by the way, using her, let's see if the word shows up here. No, I think it's in the next section. It is in verse 12. Look at this. I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. That word prudence, some of yours will show up like this. Shrewdness.
Yep.
Is that what yours says? Shrewdness. This is the word in Hebrew, arum. Arum. Do you remember where this shows up?
Mm-hmm.
The serpent was very arum, shrewd, wise, skilled, strategic. That's all. If you're reading Strength Finders, this is the strategic part of Strength Finders, right? It's not a bad word. It's a perfectly good word. It's just a matter of how your arum is used. You probably know some people who are prudent, strategic, skillful, wise, shrewd, and they use it in terrible ways, right? And you probably know some other people who use it in good ways. So this is okay. In this case, we have wisdom being shrewd. Of course, because that's what being wise is, making good choices. Okay, but some people make the good choices just for themselves and not for the whole world. So they're not conquering the chaos, they're actually inviting in more. So I possess knowledge and discretion. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have insight, I have power. By me, kings reign and rulers issue decrees. Oh. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
They issue decrees. Okay, they carve, they etch decrees that are just. By me, princes govern and nobles, all who rule on earth. Wisdom is giving you a resume right now, right? Okay, so if you want, you can choose folly if you want, but here I am, I'm wisdom, and I worked with kings, like rulers, princes, nobles, like I've done it all. Okay, so this is the resume. Tim Mackey talks about this. I think it's just a brilliant way of thinking about this. So here are the people that you should also work with me, because the great people in the world have all worked with me. She's claiming that she's shrewd, that she has moral value, that she's arum, she's strategic. Lady Folly is also strategic. Don't get me wrong, right? She uses the money. She uses the sex, right? She's leading them away to the slaughter. She's persuasive, it says, Lady Folly is. So it's a good skill to have, but it might lead to the wrong things. So the kings here are reigning and ruling. They're princes. They're doing the right things, and they're carving or hahak. This is like, it's two guttural sounds at the same time. So you'll want to practice this one. It's almost as cool as tohu vabohu. Hahak. Okay, hahak. All right, so it's awesome. So this is the word for carving out the commandments or etching something permanent. So Yahweh, I've already told you, is going to carve out more in a second, but I only got like 8 minutes or something like that. So I want to see if I can finish this chapter and not get to chapter 9, but oh man. Okay. So I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. My fruit, you hear the Edenic language here, gold, Edenic language, riches and honor. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice, bestowing a rich inheritance on those who love me. What is the inheritance going to be? This is the question for Adam. Making their treasuries full. She is more valuable than all of these riches. She's growing fruit, right? All of this is Edenic language. Seeking and finding. Okay, even that's in there, right? Where is that? I love, and those who seek me find me. Okay, also language of, remember that God is coming and trying to seek Adam, and Adam is hiding, but Adam's role was supposed to be to try to seek God out and find him, but Adam is hiding. So we're supposed to seek him. And then you'll see that all throughout the Psalms, seek and you shall find, right? It's a normal occurrence. And Matthew chapter 7:7, right? Knock and the door will be open to you, seek and you shall find, right? Ask and it'll be open. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So the Lord brought me forth as the first of his works. Oh, we're not going to be able to deal with this. Okay, we'll just introduce it. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works before his deeds of old. I was formed long ago at the very beginning when the world came to be. When there were no watery depths, I was given birth. Okay, this is all like the creation story, but wisdom is saying, I was born before all of these other things were born. When there were no springs overflowing with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the world or its fields or any of the dust of the earth, I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked, that's the word hachach, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep. Okay, this is the deep, the abyss. Again, Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, when he gave the sea, that is Yam, Genesis 1, verse 2, Yam, the sea, its boundary, or its carved outness. Okay, again, it's that word etched. So the waters would not overstep his command. And when he marked out the foundations of the earth, again, then I was constantly at his side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world and delighting in mankind. Again, the delighting idea, right? They were supposed to delight. It's almost a childish way of thinking of something, delighting in. So, all right, here's what we've got to get to, because I'm out of time. Next week, I want to ask the question about wisdom and whether we need to be wise or we need to follow rules, what's going on there. But I also want to just end with chapter 8 and verse 9, because this seems to say that wisdom came into being at some point, right? So since I've tried to show you already, although I haven't made it super clear, that wisdom is somehow Jesus, this is going to cause us some major Trinitarian problems. Okay? Because Jesus is birthed or comes to be. And if you know anything about the history of the church, this is a major discussion between people like Arius and Athanasius. Arius is going to go to Proverbs chapter 8. Arius is like a modern day Jehovah's Witness. Arius is arguing that Jesus came to be and therefore is, I mean, you figure out what that means, right? Like maybe he's not God the same way God the Father is God. Okay, so there's a whole Trinitarian thing going on here. Don't worry about it, by the way, but you know, we want to talk about it a little bit, what it means for wisdom to be birthed out of this. And I want to get to Yeah, you know what? I want to actually have a conversation about the Trinity in here. This will be majorly heretical, okay? Because I think that we've done a poor job in talking about the Trinity. I think probably everybody would agree with that if they just stop and think. The only thing we say about the Trinity is we put it in some kind of a category. Like we put the idea into a box and then we just don't touch it anymore because we're afraid that we're going to get in trouble, right? We just know that there are three persons in one Godhead, right? Or one essence, three persons. But no one uses language like this, right? We don't talk about essence. We don't know what the essence of something is. We don't even know what the personhood of something is. Like have a conversation about this with an abortion language. What does it mean to be a person, right? What is personhood? So that's our language. One essence, three persons. Don't talk about it anymore because we're going to be heretical as soon as we start talking about it. Okay, we get into the hypostatic union. Is Jesus God? How much God is he? 100% God and 100% man. That doesn't even make sense. You can't have 200%. Doesn't, right? All these kinds of things, we're getting into trouble. Let's get into trouble next week. Let's try to rewrite this in actual biblical language. I think what you're going to be, well, if you're like me and super Bible nerd, you're going to be super excited to see is that the language used for wisdom for Jesus is also the language used for Holy Spirit and maturity. Right? But Jesus can't equal the Holy Spirit. That's the whole point of the Trinity. They can't. Okay. Okay. So John 1:1 is going to talk about this with the word. This is the Logos, right? The Logos is both the Holy Spirit and Jesus. This stuff is not in Holy Spirit books. I read them a lot. I don't see this kind of conversation. James, who talks about maturity and wisdom but never talks about the Spirit, is actually using Holy Spirit language in there to refer to wisdom or maturity. So James sees wisdom and Holy Spirit as almost identical. I said that last week. I'll say it again next week. That's what I want to talk about next week. So come like thinking caps on, because I actually want to have a conversation a little bit more. This was to get to that and to get to the bigger question of, should we be looking at wisdom or law, legislation or maturity? What are we doing? All right, any last minute thoughts? As the pictures start disappearing.
Jason, I gotta ask a question back to the Genesis and chaos. It's about chaos. Was
All right, this is Todd.
chaos?
All right,
Yeah. Was chaos just seen and thought of as disorder, or was it thought of as something antithetical to God and the agent the result of these chaos monsters? Was it associated with evil, or was it neutral or good?
It was considered and the enemy of order, of ma'at. Okay, and God, or at least Yahweh in our text usually, is the God of order. So it is not a neutral thing in most of the texts. So that's why Jesus comes to do battle against those kinds of things. He fights against the chaos beings, the demons. It's why.
But he fights against the beings, but is he necessarily fighting against the disorder?
Well, the beings are. See, we need to get into an ontology discussion, Todd. You and me. Like this asks the question: are demons actual beings?
Yeah.
Or are they the personification of disorder? Okay, so maybe both. But that becomes a much bigger question when we start moving from the literature to the beingness of something. Right?
Well, then I think it ties into the future discussions on the logos and the spirit and the order. So
it does.
Interesting.
All right. So
Thanks.
yeah, I didn't answer anything, but you're welcome.
No, that's a perfect answer.
Let's talk more about it though, because that's exciting to me, that kind of conversation. But I have elders showing up for my session meeting. Anybody have last minute things they want to say?
I have a couple of things.
All right, Hannah gets the last.
I have a thought, just that it's amazing how often these texts are used against women. Just like you were saying with like the wayward woman, and being loud and, they need to be submissive and things like that, or used to put a prescription on what a woman should be. That's my first thing, just a comment. And then the second thing is, this has just been something I've been unpacking for a while now, but just thinking through like, okay, so these aren't rules, and there's so much baggage there with just guilt and shame from the things that you're should be doing, have to be doing, need to be doing. And it's just interesting to be thinking about it and thinking how do you live in the freedom? Obviously I'm not a crazy person or anything, but there still is just a lot of like weight there. And how do you let that go? It's just a thought.
Yeah, that's why I want to have that discussion next week, because I don't feel like I have the answers to that. Like, I don't think that we just get rid of rules and it's just, wisdom. But what is there some sort of a way that these work together? Like, are there certain things that you need to follow but still have freedom? Like, I don't think there are no rules anymore. So I just
I don't think so either, but I think that we put rules on ourselves that aren't even necessarily necessary rules. There are rules we put on ourselves because we've been told these are the rules.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so to hear that,
like the Pharisees. Like the Pharisees who made up all the little bitty detailed things so they didn't break the rule.
Although I would go even further than that. I think Hannah and Lisa are absolutely right that we make up lots of rules for ourselves that aren't there. But what I'm doing is even taking this a step further and saying that even the rules that are there might be suspect for us in our covenant today. That's what we've got to figure out. So I think we can all agree, I hope we can agree, even if we are bad at it, that this legalism and that stuff is killing us and we need to be free. So let's talk about that too. Yeah. See, this could be like a huge conversation. So bring that stuff up again next week, Hannah, please.
Okay, remind me.
And women, you're free. Women, you are free. Okay, stop feeling like you're stuck in Proverbs 31 woman land. All right. Love you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jace.
Gotta go to the next group. See y'all.